initiated the end of the Bangles? Who was it who, came with the word, basically?
I think Michael Steele and I sort of called each other up and realized we didn't really want to make another record in the band, and then we had to tell the other girls, and so it was tough.
Yeah.
It was hard.
They looked like the perfect girl band. Flawless harmonies, chart-topping hits, and that quirky walk like an Egyptian. Move everyone copied. But behind the glitter and fame, the Bangles were falling apart. Fights broke out backstage. Dressing rooms turned into war zones. And that one side eye, it tore the whole group in two. What began as a dream in a California garage spiraled into a mess of jealousy, silent grudges, and breakdowns. So what really happened behind the scenes? And did fame ruin the Bangles before they ever had a chance? Join us as we find out what really destroyed the Bangles. The Bangles. It all began in a cozy living room in Los Angeles, 1981. Three young women who loved music sat nervously in the home of Susanna Hoffs's parents. Susanna, with her big eyes and soft voice, welcomed sisters Vicky and Debbie Peterson. They were strangers, really meeting for the first time after connecting through a newspaper ad in the Recycler. The ad was simple. She loved 60s music and wanted to find others who felt the same. This old-school matchmaking method seems strange today, but it worked perfectly. While punk rockers were smashing guitars and new wave bands played with synthesizers, Susanna was listing her love for the Byrds and the Beatles. It was like saying you loved flip phones in the smartphone era, totally against the trend. But sometimes being different is exactly what makes history. The room felt awkward at first. These three girls didn't know if they'd click or clash. To break the ice, someone suggested they sing something. They picked an old 60s tune they all knew from growing up, something from the Mamas and the Papas. What happened next changed their lives forever. Without any practice or warm-up, their voices blended like they'd been singing together for years. The harmony was perfect, angelic even. They stopped mid-song and just stared at each other in shock. No one had to say it. This was special. Vicky would later tell friends it was instant, absolutely instant, how they knew they needed to form a band together. These weren't just any valley girls with dreams. All three had serious musical backgrounds. Susanna had studied art at Berkeley, but couldn't shake her love of music. Vicky had been playing guitar since she was 8. And Debbie, the youngest, had picked up drums as a teenager and never looked back. Back then, Los Angeles was full of punk rockers and new wave bands. Everyone wore black, played fast, and shouted angry lyrics. But these girls were different. They loved the jangly guitars and sweet harmonies of 1960s bands like the Byrds and the Beatles. In a sea of punk, they stood out with their vintage style and sunny California sound. They called themselves the Colors at first, then the Supersonic Bangs, before settling on just the Bangs. They practiced in garages and tiny apartments, working on original songs that mixed 60s pop with modern energy. To complete their sound, they needed a bass player. Annette Zilinskas, a talented musician who also answered Susanna's newspaper ad. With her on board, the band was complete. Their first shows were at small clubs like Madame Wong's and the Whiskey A Go-Go on Sunset Strip. Early fans remember being surprised by how good they actually were. In a scene where many bands were all style and no substance, the Bangs could really play. Vicky's guitar solos were sharp and confident. Debbie's drumming was rock solid. Susanna's voice was sweet but strong, and Annette held down the bass with natural skill. Word spread quickly through Los Angeles's underground music scene. They weren't just cute girls playing at being rock stars, they were serious musicians with serious talent. They became part of what critics called the Paisley Underground, a group of bands bringing back 60s psychedelic sounds. Life threw an unexpected curve at them when they discovered another band on the East Coast already owned the name The Bangs. The news came with a legal letter. The Bangs existed and owned the rights to the name. Rather than spend money they didn't have on lawyers, they made a quick decision to add Les to their name. The Bangles were born. It wasn't their first choice, but their options were not so many. By 1982, they had recorded their first EP. The songs The Real World and Getting Out of Hand started getting radio play on college stations. Local music papers wrote about them. Record label scouts began showing up at their shows. No one could have guessed where their perfect harmony would take them. From that living room in the valley, music history was being made, one practice session at a time. They knew the harmonies were magic, but how do you turn backyard dreams into a real band, especially when the whole music world was into punk? Almost forgotten. Then, Manic Monday happened. The Bangles were finding their groove in the LA music scene when a big change shook things up. Annette Zelinskas, their original bass player, decided to leave the band. She wanted to join another group called Blood on the Saddle, which had a harder, more country punk sound. This left a huge hole in the band right when things were starting to take off. Finding a new bass player wasn't easy. They needed someone who could play well, sing harmonies, and fit with their personalities. Their search ended with Michael Steele, and, despite the name, Michael was a woman with serious rock credentials. She had been part of the pioneering all-girl punk band The Runaways, alongside Joan Jett. Though she joined The Runaways early on, she left before they became famous. Michael brought a tougher edge and deeper voice to the Bangles' sound. In 1984, the newly formed quartet released their first full album with Columbia Records called All Over the Place. The record showed off their raw talent with songs like Hero Takes a Fall and Going Down to Liverpool. Music critics loved it, but regular radio stations mostly ignored it. The album barely made a dent on the charts, reaching only number 80 on the Billboard 200. Still, college radio stations played their songs constantly. Their music videos started appearing on MTV, including one for Going Down to Liverpool that featured Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek fame. This strange pairing happened because of a family connection. Susanna Hoff's family knew Nimoy personally. Their big break came when they opened for Cyndi Lauper on her Fun Tour. Thousands of new fans saw them perform each night. Among those new fans was one very important person, Prince. The purple-loving superstar saw something special in the Bangles, especially in their harmonies and 60s-inspired sound. He decided to give them a gift, a song he had written called Manic Monday. This wasn't just any song. It was originally meant for Prince's own group, Apollonia 6. Getting a Prince song in the mid-80s was like winning the lottery. With Manic Monday ready to go, the Bangles headed back to the studio to record their second album, Different Light. This time, they worked with producer David Kahn, who polished their sound for mainstream radio. The album came out in January 1986 and changed everything. Manic Monday shot to number 2 on the charts worldwide. The only song that kept it from hitting number 1 was Prince's own Kiss. He basically competed with himself. The song connected with people who hated getting up for work after the weekend, which was pretty much everyone. The album's success didn't stop there. It spawned more hits like If She Knew What She Wants and Walking Down Your Street. The record climbed to number 2 on the Billboard charts and went triple platinum in the US, selling over 3 million copies. In England, it went platinum too. What made Different Light special was how it balanced their rock roots with more radio-friendly pop sounds. They weren't just underground darlings anymore, they were bona fide stars. Their faces appeared in teen magazines. They performed on TV shows. Suddenly, the Bangles were everywhere. But the biggest explosion was still to come. They got famous, fast. Then the obsession began. Before the Bangles were household names, they caught the attention of music royalty. In August 1984, Susanna Hoffs pulled off what seemed impossible. She convinced their record company representative, Peter Phelan, to invite Prince to one of their shows. Nobody expected the superstar to show up, but to everyone's shock, the Purple One actually appeared. This wasn't just a casual visit. Prince was genuinely impressed by their talent and sound. He understood what made the Bangles special: their harmonies, their style, and their musical chops. In a truly generous move, he handed them a gift that would change everything: a song called Manic Monday. Prince was known for writing songs for other artists, but this was different. The song was perfect for the Bangles. He had captured their essence, crafting a tune that felt like it was made just for them. The Prince connection gave the Bangles serious music credibility. Here was one of the biggest stars in the world saying these women were the real deal. Their sound even influenced Prince's own music during his psychedelic phase, and he named his famous Paisley Park studios, partly as a nod to the Paisley underground scene the Bangles came from. But as the years went by, this professional relationship took an uncomfortable turn. What started as admiration shifted into something more obsessive. Prince began leaving mysterious messages on their tour bus. He would show up at unexpected times, hovering around the band without explanation. Sometimes he'd appear on stage during their performances without warning. Things got even stranger when his purple limousine started appearing wherever the band went. The car would be there, parked outside venues or hotels, but Prince would never get out. It was as if he were watching them from a distance. The band started to feel like they were being followed, creating an eerie feeling that mixed flattery with discomfort. Being famous came with other bizarre experiences, particularly in the form of fan mail. While most fans sent kind letters and normal gifts, some took things to disturbing levels. Vicki Peterson once received a necklace made entirely of chicken bones. This wasn't a cute handmade jewelry piece, it was actual poultry remains strung together and mailed to her. The gesture crossed the line from unusual to unsettling. Even more disturbing was a package sent to Susanna Hoffs. Inside was an old-fashioned apothecary bottle filled with a cloudy white liquid. The contents were exactly what most people would fear: a deeply inappropriate bodily fluid from an obsessed fan. This shocking incident forced the band to change how they handled mail. After these experiences, the Bangles implemented strict safety rules. They started wearing gloves when opening fan mail and had staff screen packages before they reached the band members. These weren't just divas making demands. These were women protecting themselves from genuine threats hidden among the fan appreciation. The contrast was stark. On one side, they had one of music's biggest geniuses supporting their career. And on the other, they faced the dark side of fame through disturbing fan obsessions. Both experiences showed how being famous women in rock came with complications that their male counterparts rarely had to deal with. While Prince and Weird fans haunted their fame, a bigger battle was brewing behind their smiles. How did sexism shape their story? Women in rock. The Bangles faced an uphill battle that many female musicians of the 1980s understood all too well. While their male counterparts could simply focus on making music, the ladies of the Bangles had to constantly prove themselves worthy of being taken seriously in the rock world. Critics often dismissed them with backhanded compliments. They weren't seen as a legitimate rock band, but instead as just another cute girl group. This frustrated the band to no end because they were serious musicians with serious talent. Each member was skilled at their instrument, wrote songs, and contributed vocally to create those perfect harmonies they became known for. When critics suggested they weren't tough enough or that an all-female band should have been more aggressively feminist, the Bangles responded in their own ways. Vicki Peterson and Michael Steele often used sarcasm to deal with the haters. Meanwhile, Susanna Hoffs took a more straightforward approach, focusing on the music rather than the criticism. The band's philosophy was simple but powerful. Instead of complaining about how many people thought women couldn't do rock and roll, they would let their music speak for itself. They would just be a band, go out there, and do their job. Actions spoke louder than words, and the Bangles were determined to prove themselves through their performances and recordings. Despite being lumped together as just the girls in the band, each member had their own distinct voice and style. Debbie Peterson wasn't just a drummer. She took the lead vocals on songs like Going Down to Liverpool. Vicki Peterson and Michael Steele each had moments where they took center stage. And while Susanna Hoffs often got the most attention, it was their collective talent that made the Bangles special. Behind the scenes, the band worked tirelessly on their craft. They spent countless hours rehearsing, writing, and perfecting their sound. They weren't manufactured by some record executive. They were musicians who came together because of a shared love of 1960s rock and a desire to create something new from those influences. The Bangles handled a double standard that plagued women in rock. If they emphasized their femininity, they risked not being taken seriously. If they downplayed it, they were criticized for not being feminine enough. This no-win situation was frustrating, but didn't stop them from pushing forward. Their determination paid off when songs like Walk Like an Egyptian and Eternal Flame topped the charts, proving that an all-female band could indeed create global hits. Each success chipped away at the rock world's stubborn sexism. The legacy of the Bangles extends beyond their chart success. They helped pave the way for future generations of women in rock by showing that female musicians could play their own instruments, write their own songs, and create music on their own terms, not as novelties, but as serious artists with something important to say. With a superstar's status secured with the baggage that comes with it, the Bangles were on a roll. But who knew they still weren't it yet, and ancient Egypt would be their ticket? What happened next? The Egyptian takeover, while Manic Monday made the Bangles famous, another song from Different Light would turn them into cultural icons. Walk Like an Egyptian wasn't even written by the band. A songwriter named Liam Sternberg came up with it after watching people on a ferry trying to keep their balance on choppy waters. Their funny sideways walking reminded him of figures in ancient Egyptian art. The story of how this song reached the Bangles is full of lucky accidents. First, Sternberg offered it to singer Toni Basil, who had the huge hit Mickey a few years earlier. She turned it down. Then, another singer named Line Lovitch recorded it, but shelved the song when she decided to take a break from music to raise her family. The song was basically homeless until it found the Bangles. When the band first heard the demo, they weren't sure about it. Half the group loved it, half thought it was too silly. They recorded it anyway, with each member taking turns singing different verses. This wasn't their usual style. They were a serious rock band, not a novelty act. But sometimes, the biggest hits come from taking chances. Released as the third single from their album, Walk Like an Egyptian, exploded in popularity in late 1986. It hit #1 on the charts and stayed there for 4 weeks. The song's catchy hook and danceable beat were one thing, but what really made it a phenomenon was the music video. The video mixed shots of the Bangles, with random people on the street doing the now famous sideways Egyptian dance move. The directors filmed regular folks, shopkeepers, police officers, school kids, all doing the hand-twisting, head-jerking dance. It was simple, fun, and incredibly copyable. Within weeks, people at parties, in school hallways, and on dance floors everywhere were walking like Egyptians. The song became so big that it topped Billboard's year-end chart for 1987 as the #1 single of the entire year. Kids who couldn't name a single pharaoh were suddenly obsessed with all things Egyptian. Schools reported students drawing hieroglyphics in notebooks. Halloween that year saw thousands of people dressed in Egyptian costumes. But success brought strange problems too. Some radio stations in Europe banned the song during the First Gulf War in 1991, believing a silly song about Middle Eastern culture wasn't appropriate during a serious conflict. The BBC even put it on a list called Records to Avoid, which probably just made people want to hear it more. The Bangles were nominated for Best Group Video at the 1987 MTV Video Music Awards for Walk Like an Egyptian. They didn't win, but the nomination showed how they had crossed over from music to broader pop culture. The song's popularity had another unexpected side effect. It started making cracks in the band's unity. Susanna Hoff's flirty eye move in the video, where she glanced sideways at the camera while singing, got lots of attention. Magazines started focusing on her more than the other members. Fans held up signs at concerts that said, "We love your eyes, Susanna." While it might seem small, this extra attention would later cause big problems. Walk Like an Egyptian transformed the Bangles from a successful band into a worldwide phenomenon. They weren't just heard on radios, they were now part of everyday conversations, joke punchlines, and playground games. The song followed them everywhere, becoming both their biggest triumph and, as they would later discover, part of the heavy weight of fame that threatened to pull them apart. Their Egyptian dance conquered the world, but behind those smiles, paradise was crumbling. What dark secrets were they hiding? Fame, fractures, and the fall. As the Bangles climbed to the top of the charts, the sweet taste of success came with a bitter aftertaste. By 1988, they had it all. Hit records, sold-out tours, and worldwide fame. Their third album, Everything, should have been their victory lap. Instead, it became the beginning of the end. Behind those perfect harmonies and catchy tunes, trouble was brewing. The band that once practiced in garages and bonded over their love of 60s music was now falling apart at the seams. The problem wasn't that they hated each other, it was that fame changed everything. The tension centered around Susanna Hoffs. As the band got bigger, the spotlight seemed to shine brighter on her than anyone else. The media couldn't get enough of her big eyes, sweet voice, and star quality. Soon, it wasn't the Bangles anymore. In the public eye, it became Susanna Hoffs and the band. This shift wasn't really Susanna's fault. She didn't ask to be the center of attention. The record label pushed her forward because they thought she had the most star power. Her face was featured more prominently on album covers. Her voice led more of the hit singles. Her interviews got more press. All this extra attention created a gap between her and her bandmates. The other members, Vicki Peterson, Debbie Peterson, and Michael Steele, felt pushed to the side. They were all talented musicians who wrote songs and sang lead vocals too, but they weren't getting the same recognition. This created a weird team dynamic where one player got all the cheers while the others did just as much work. Their album, Everything, shows how bad things had gotten. Fans call it their White Album, as a nod to the Beatles' self-titled album, where each member recorded separately because they couldn't stand being in the studio together. The Bangles were barely functioning as a unit. Songs were recorded with band members coming in at different times, avoiding each other to prevent fights. The stress took a serious toll, especially on drummer Debbie Peterson. The happy vibes of their music hid the dark feelings building up behind the scenes. While fans were dancing to Eternal Flame and In Your Room, the band was falling apart emotionally. Even simple things became huge problems. In the Walk Like an Egyptian video, Susanna's famous side-to-side glance with her eyes became an iconic moment that fans loved. But inside the band, it was seen as one more example of her stealing attention. One more reason for resentment to grow. The tension wasn't all about jealousy. It was about creative control, too. The band that started with everyone having an equal say was now being pulled in different directions. Management saw dollar signs in potential solo careers, especially for Susanna. This drove an even bigger wedge between the members. By 1989, the Bangles couldn't take it anymore. At what should have been their peak, while planning a huge international tour, they suddenly called it quits. The band that conquered charts worldwide with their sunny California sound had burned out in the harsh light of fame. The Bangles became another cautionary tale of how success can sometimes be the very thing that tears a band apart. Even though the band fractured under the spotlight, their journey was far from over. What happened when the music stopped? Where are they now? Life after the band. In 1989, at the height of their success, the Bangles vanished. The band that gave the world Eternal Flame and Walk Like an Egyptian suddenly called it quits. They didn't just postpone shows or take a break, they completely disbanded while planning a massive international tour. Fans were shocked. How could a band with hit songs and sold-out shows just disappear? The years following the breakup sent each member down a different path. Susanna Hoffs went solo first, releasing her album When You're a Boy in 1991. Her single, My Side of the Bed, made it to the Billboard Top 40, but solo stardom wasn't as easy as she expected. She discovered quickly that being on her own meant handling all the jobs she never had to worry about in a band. There was no one to share the burden with. From business decisions to stage performances, everything fell on her shoulders. Meanwhile, Vicki Peterson kept busy with other musical projects. She joined the Continental Drifters, a band that never reached mainstream fame but earned respect from music critics and other musicians. She also spent time filling in for Charlotte Caffey in the Go-Go's when Caffey was on maternity leave. This move created an interesting connection between two of the biggest all-female bands of the 1980s. Drummer Debbie Peterson formed a band called Kindred Spirit after her earlier project Smashbox, with Go-Go's drummer Gina Schock fizzled out. This collaboration showed how tight-knit the female rock community was in Los Angeles, with members of different bands supporting each other. Michael Steele stepped away from the spotlight after playing with a band called Crash Wisdom. Some of the songs she wrote during this period, like Nickel Romeo and Between the Two, would later find a home when the Bangles reunited. The 1990s passed without the Bangles, and they missed the entire decade when female musicians like Alanis Morissette, Sheryl Crow, and bands like Hole and the Breeders were making waves. Women in rock were gaining more respect, something the Bangles had fought for but hadn't fully achieved in their heyday. Then, in 1998, nearly a decade after their split, something unexpected happened. The band reunited, but not for a big comeback tour or album. Instead, they came together to record a song called Get the Girl for the Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me soundtrack. The request came from the movie's director, Jay Roach, who happened to be Susanna Hoffs' husband. This small project sparked something bigger. By the year 2000, the Bangles were touring again. The time apart had changed them. They were older, wiser, and had learned valuable lessons about friendship, collaboration, and music. They'd grown up. The tensions that tore them apart had eased with time and perspective. In 2001 and 2002, they worked on a new album called Doll Revolution. Released in 2003, it featured songs like Something That You Said and the title track, which was written by Elvis Costello. The album showed a more mature sound while keeping their signature harmonies and jangly guitars. It did well in Germany, but didn't make much impact in the US or UK. The music world had changed, and the Bangles were no longer chart toppers. Another change came in 2005 when Michael Steele left the band over disagreements about touring and recording schedules. Various bass players filled in, including Abby Travis and Derek Anderson. Then something special happened in 2018. Original bassist Annette Zilinskas, who had left back in 1983 before their major success, rejoined the group. For the first time since 1983, all 4 founding members were back together. Between reunions, the Bangles released Sweetheart of the Sun in 2011 and a collection of rarities called Ladies and Gentlemen, The Bangles in 2014. They received recognition for their contributions to music with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2007. That same year, Paul McCartney, a hero to the band, presented them with honorary rock and roll diplomas from his Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts. The Bangles also reconnected with their Paisley Underground roots, performing with bands like The Dream Syndicate, The 3 O'Clock, and Rain Parade in 2013. In 2018, they recorded songs for an album called 3x4, where each band covered songs by the others. This project brought them full circle, back to the scene where they started. Today, all 4 members are in their 60s, balancing music with family life and other creative projects. Susanna Hoffs has even become an author, writing a well-received romantic comedy novel called This Bird Has Flown. Though they never regained their 1980s commercial peak, the Bangles left an undeniable mark on rock history, proving that women could create music that would last on their own terms. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out another interesting video by clicking on the video shown on your screen. See you on the other side.